Yeah, fighters, what's going on, y'all? So we're talking about how to form habits in 3 steps, okay? And we could really dive into deeper steps and make it expanded out, but figure keep it a little bit simpler for you guys. 3 steps, actionable steps that you can take that will make an impact, okay? The first one, and also you guys are going to notice we got a cool new background. I didn't want to not address. Check out the logo here, a little kind of graphic of myself, another one over here, the belt. It's kind of cool, y'all. It's not even done yet. We're going to have a whole more stuff added to it, which I'm really excited about, but just figured I'd highlight that really quick. You're also going to notice I'm going to reference over here. I got notes written out for myself just to keep me on track here a little bit more. So first one we're going to talk about is this 1 to 10 scale. I talk to my clients about all the time. And if you work with me, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't heard this yet, it's something we're going to dive into at a certain point in our training together. And it's that doability scale of 1 to 10. So we're building a habit. It can be really easy to want to get really lofty with what we're getting after, which is I'm all for that. I love taking action. I love setting big goals, like, shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars kind of a deal. However, there's a balancing act to that. If we're constantly going for, and if we break it down on the scale of 1 to 10, 1's impossible, 10's do it with your eyes closed. If you're constantly shooting for things on the 1, 2, or 3 end of the scale where it's like almost impossible, never gonna happen. Like for example, me sprouting wings right now and flying away. It's not happening, right? Or, just to take a very transparent shot into our business where we're currently at, going from, the, let's say 100K mark, going to literally tomorrow, jumping to the $1 million mark. Not going to happen, at least not because I don't have a product or a certain thing that we're prepping for. Actually, that will be eventually the game plan of when you have certain product releases and service offers and different things, it gets that big jump. But that's another point. The idea here is when we're talking about habits, when we're talking about things we want to do repetitively and that are going to be for the long term, I want to have it on the 8, 9, or 10 end of the scale. And again, for this doability scale, it's again, when you lay it out, 1's impossible, never going to happen really. 10 is no problem to do with my eyes closed. 8, 9, or 10 is something you can pretty easily do. So you feel confident about it. And there's an idea behind this, and there's even some science that'll back it. And the idea here is basically if you're going to continuously put yourself in a position where you're going to succeed, feels good, and it's something that you can build momentum on, and it's something that you can continuously look forward to instead of being frustrated or disappointed at, or excuse me, and this is even I've talked about in prior podcasts of being nice to yourself and how you talk to yourself. And if you constantly set yourself up for failure, no matter how nice you are to yourself, it's kind of hard to keep that internal monologue positive. So set yourself up for success while also positively talking to yourself by letting yourself have success, or at least giving yourself that really high percentage chance. So that's the first tip, and being able to have that doability scale favor 8, 9, or a 10. Okay. The second tip is our SMART goal setup and the basis off of that. So what do I mean by that? Most of you have probably heard me talk about SMART goals in past episodes, or that work with me, or just have heard it in general, but I'm going to break it down again. SMART is an acronym that's going to stand for, and it's also, I think, just SMART goals is, I think, a fun way to think of a goal, like set it up where it's actually an intelligent thing for you to do. But SMART breaks down to specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive. So let's break down each one of those. So specific. It's got to be a very dialed in goal, for example, especially on the short term and then even on the bigger term. Short term, this week, I want to get 5 1-hour resistance training sessions in. I'm just making that up actually, but let's just say that's the case. Okay. So not only we talked about specific, it's specific with what the goal is versus I want to work out this week. I mean, that's a goal, that's a habit for sure, but what kind of workout? Is it weight training, resistance training? Is it body weight? Is it jiu-jitsu? Is it Muay Thai? And I'm just speaking from my own, is it aerobic with running? Is it bicycling? Whatever. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about with the specificity behind it, right? So that's the first one. Set yourself up for success. Be specific. Second part, measurable. Again, we add a number in there. It's something you can measure. So I know if I hit 5 workouts that are an hour long, I can measure that. If I hit 4 workouts that are a half hour long, I didn't. Not to say that's bad, but we at least have an indicator of where we're at and what we're looking to do. So that's a big part, I think, of, again, setting ourselves up for success, to make it a successful habit too, not just a goal. Because if you want to routinely do this week in and week out, let's say from now on, even I'll give you guys another example. A habit for myself is getting in at least 2, I want to say 3, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes in every week. 2 1-hour Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes in at Rogue Combat Club is even a more specific, dialed in SMART goal. That's measurable. I can check that, hey, I went, got an hour in, it was twice a week, cool. Now attainable. Here's the next piece of the SMART goal. A for attainable, right? It's got to be, again, going back to the doability scale. See how it ties in here? Being able to have something that you can actually do. Again, otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure. Why are we doing that? Like, again, I'm not going to try and make $1 million overnight and waste my energy on things that aren't realistic for it to happen, because then that's not actually being productive. That's just distracting yourself in another direction. That's wasting time. You could be spinning your wheels 100 miles an hour, but if you're stuck in the mud, you're not going anywhere. And that's like, shout out to all my New Yorkers and Northerners now, like from being in the South a bit, I'm starting to get these analogies where you get stuck in the mud and shit. Anyways, a little sidetrack. So we got the first three: specific, measurable, attainable. Now relevant. So relevant as far as to the goal, the habit, and what you want to ultimately have it build towards. So for example, if I want to have a habit of being able to exercise and go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 3 times a week, it's got to be relevant to my bigger goal related to health and fitness, or whatever the genre of goals I'm setting. If it's a financial goal, maybe going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 2 to 3 times a week is great, but is it relevant to my financial side of things? I mean, actually for me, it kind of is indirectly, because I get to sharpen my skills and hone myself and then be able to share that with you guys. And that helps me put out great content and ultimately get paid from that. But that's a different story altogether. However, it's got to be relevant to ultimately the bigger picture and what you're working towards and the habits you're looking to build on. If it's not relevant, it doesn't make sense. For example, let's talk about fasting. If you're an athlete and you say, well, you know what, this week I'm going to do intermittent fasting. That's just what you're setting up. First off, how are you going to measure that? How many times do you want to do it? Is that not only attainable, it's a different thing, but is it relevant to what you're trying to accomplish? If it's, again, a fighter and you're trying to stay healthy in camp, that's not necessarily relevant per se, because it's actually be hindering you and a whole bunch of other things are going on there. That's just one example of the relevancy to how we set those goals and habits. Is it relevant to the big picture and what you're working towards? Then we go to T, it's time sensitive. So give yourself, hey, by the end of this week, by September 1st, by January 2021, or by 10 o'clock tonight, whatever the number is, but it's got to be specific. You have to have an edge. Otherwise, you can keep pushing it back and pushing it off. Or, at least you can then check back and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I did fail, but at least I have an opportunity at a time and a checkpoint to say, well, what happened? I can review from there and then make adjustments moving forward. So again, whole thing, recapping that: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time sensitive. Okay. And again, that's the second tip and second piece to habit building. Okay. So I'll recap that and then we'll go into number 3, which is the sustainability of it. 1 is that 1 to 10 scale, and that ties in with the SMART goal of attainability. And again, setting yourselves up for success. So psychologically, it feels good. You build momentum behind it. And honestly, I say start simpler. And this is what, like, clients that work with me, and you guys know this, I say start almost simpler. And sometimes, I can tell you guys get a little impatient, right? So you're like, well, I want to get after it. And not even people that I work with, just in general out there, it's tempting to want. And that's what happens with New Year's resolutions a lot of the times. You set up this lofty goal, not really attainable. It's not on a 8, 9, or 10 on that doability scale, and ultimately you're going to fail. All right. And then there's other things that come up, and maybe you didn't set yourself up for success. You didn't have the accountability or the support you need, whatever have you. So that's the first one. Second one, have it be a SMART goal basis. So every week when you're working these habits, let's say you want to quit smoking, for example, you can't even just say quit smoking. That's why I think a lot of times it's a failure, because people, there's an addictive nature, obviously, with nicotine and all these other dynamic social cues and blah, blah, blah. But, and again, this is not medical advice here, but with even quitting smoking from the habit standpoint, if you're not saying, all right, I want to, let's say you're smoking a pack a day. I don't even know how many are in a pack, but let's just say it's 10, just for an arbitrary number. There's 10 cigarettes in a pack. If you just say, all right, well, I just want to stop smoking. That's the goal. All right, well, when do you want to stop smoking by? How are you going to do that? What's the plan? How are you going to measure it? Is that doable on that doability scale? And then how can you measure it with that SMART goal? So instead, let's say, okay, first week number 1, I want to go from smoking 10 cigarettes a day to 7 cigarettes a day, or 5, or whatever the number is. Or I only want to smoke once a day. And in 2 weeks, so 14 days from now, I want to be able to go 3 days without smoking a cigarette, and then I'll have 1, or some variation of that. That's how you put it all together. And then when we go back to the final tip number 3, the sustainability of it, These first two are things that are going to help you set up for that sustainability. Meaning, if you just say, all right, I'm never going to cold turkey, and some people can do that, that's great. But if you just really look at what the sustainability is, you go cold turkey, I would say 90%, I'm making up this number, but I would say a very high percentage. Okay. And this is where like I would do research, but I want you guys just to understand that. And if you guys want numbers, let me know. You can comment either on the podcast or on a social media post when you see this or whatever have you, or email me and I'll get research for it. If you guys really want to get into that, I'm always happy to do research, especially for those that are interested. But if you just go cold turkey, the chances are of you doing it again at a certain point, because you didn't create the habits to actually deal with the routine of defaulting to smoking cigarettes, you're not going to be successful. All right. For example, if you go out to a social event and you didn't set yourself up with a habit yet on how you're going to address being around other people and other smokers, the temptation to get back to that is going to be pretty high. There's also this other psychological dynamic where you'd be like, well, I'm just no longer a smoker anymore, and how you think of yourself in your mind. That definitely works. But again, creating those habits and creating that routine is a big component to it. So that's, again, all three. And I'll recap those again one more time, just because I want to make sure I'm being clear here. Sometimes I talk fast, y'all. I know. So I want to make sure it's all coming together. So again, we have that doability scale, 1 through 10. Make sure you're on an 8, 9, or a 10. Number 2, we have a SMART goal that we're routinely using that fits with the bigger picture. So it's specific, it's measurable, attainable, it's going to be relevant ultimately to that big picture, and time sensitive, so we know when we have to get it done by, and we can recap from there. And then third, it's sustainable overall. So that means you can repeat it over time. For example, you can even have a SMART goal that may even be doable from the 1 through 10. I'll give you guys a perfect example. Right now, I'm taking some paternity leave to spend time with Tessa and the girls and help around the house for August. So right now, my schedule is different than what it's going to look like in October or November, for example. So if I base what my habit's going to be now for, I don't know, whatever it's going to be like, let's say 2 o'clock, I work out, or just something along those lines. So at 2 o'clock every day, I'm going to spend 1 hour doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 3 times a week. I just said every day, but let's say 3 times a week to give it a more specific number. Okay, that's doable now, but what's the sustainability of that? 3 months from now, that's probably not going to be sustainable. Now, there is the argument you could say, well, Mike, if you create that habit, you'll make time for it later on, possibly. But I know, I'll be honest with you guys, I know my schedule. I know what's going to happen come September and October. I'm going to refill that schedule in that mid-afternoon time. And truthfully, again, what's sustainable now, I know later, I'm not even going to want to do that time. And it's not beneficial for me. So knowing what's sustainable based on not only where you're currently at, but even fast forwarding a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean it's an opportunity to make an excuse. A lot of times I think people take that as an opportunity to make an excuse. So be brutally honest with yourself here too, and call yourself on your shit. And I'll be honest, guys, I know it's hard. So that's why, we have all the services that we have and the courses that we're putting out, and we have now all the different like coaching programs, accountability, and things that we offer is to help set you up for success. Even the groups that we have, if you are not comfortable doing that, and if you are, props to you, and we're here to support you whatever you need. But if you need even more support, reach out to us, whether you're a client or not. Clients, we can always upgrade you, or myself and the other coaches that we have that you're working with can get more in tune depending on what your package and what you're working with is. Or if you're someone that hasn't worked with us yet, that's what we're here for. That's what myself and my team, we do all day, every day. This is what I get to do, and I love doing it. So I want to be able to share that with you guys. So I hope that's a helpful kind of snippet of information. You guys find value in this, and you guys can tell I love talking. So I'm looking forward to being able to tell you guys, not tell you, but talk with you guys some more a little bit on the next topic. Again, let us know if you want to hear something else. You have a request, put it in comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or if it's on the podcast. You can click on one of the links below and it'll bring it over to the social media page. You can send me a message, or you can just email lifeofafighter@gmail.com. Myself or someone on the team will get back to you. Or if you have my number, reach out to me, like text me. All my private clients and everyone that works with me, you guys have my number, or one of your coaches' numbers. Reach out to us, let us know. And if not, again, you have the email, you have all those public platforms. All right, I'll check you guys later. Peace, y'all.